Buffett, we grew up not that religious as a family, but Buffettisms and Mungerisms were at the forefront of everything. So the biggest thing was no self-pity, no envy.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Ascending Immigrant Show. My name is Jasmine and my goal at this show is to introduce you to authors, innovators, creators, entrepreneurs in the diaspora who've done incredible things in the hope to inspire and motivate you so you can achieve your goals and dreams. So today we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Monsoon Pabrai. She is the managing director of Drew Investment Fund. She is a 28-year-old and graduated from UC Berkeley with a BA in political science. She also helps her family out with their foundation in India called Dakshana, with the aim to help underprivileged children get into the topmost best colleges in India. And I'm very, very excited today to talk to Monsoon. So Monsoon, thank you so much for coming and talking. You're one of my first guests. I'm very excited, but also very nervous.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Monsoon, let's start from the very beginning. Tell me a little bit about your childhood. Where did you grow up? What was your, house like? What was the environment around you?
So I was born in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Around the time I was 7, 8 years old, we moved from Illinois to Southern California. And we lived in a neighborhood where when we came in 2003, our specific neighborhood was almost 85, 90% Caucasian. And when we moved out of that house 10 years later, it was 50% Caucasian, 50% Asian. Mm-hmm. And so my elementary, middle, high school was, for the most part, 50% Asian, 50% Caucasian. And being the child of immigrants, I was in all the AP and honors classes. So those classes were 90, 95% Asian. And almost all my peers were children of immigrants. And maybe that's who I was drawn to. But we kind of had a shared experience. Some were Indian, some were Taiwanese, Chinese, Korean. I went to a public school, but it was competitive, and I'm still close to so many of them even today.
That's amazing.
Yes.
And when did your parents immigrate to the US and how did that happen?
They came separately in the 80s. Mm-hmm. So my dad came for undergrad, and my mom came for her master's. And they had an arranged marriage, kind of arranged introduction through a newspaper advertisement in 92. So they got married then.
Your father is a very famous investor, Mohnish Pabrai. When did you decide that you wanted to follow his path or get into investing?
So I had been exposed to it from a young age. And I think he was different than a lot of other parents in that he really involved, and my mom, both my sister and I, in kind of the investments. So not all the time, but I do remember maybe 2 or 3 dinners a year, he would explain an investment or explain the business model. Mm-hmm. But what he really was doing most of the time was if we went to Chipotle, he would ask us, how do they make money? And, this is the business model, and McDonald's had invested in them. And, we were 9, 10 years old. It's confusing. But as you get more and more exposed to it growing up, it just became really obvious and really clear. And then before I knew it, I was in college and we were discussing what a leverage buyout was. Wow. Or things like that. So I think the earliest memory I have, I was 8 and my sister was 6. And he asked us to pick a stock. And it was something that he was trying to push the idea of a circle of competence, but it was something that we understood that we thought would be around for a long time. So I picked Target, mm-hmm. and my younger sister picked Disney. So he framed our stock and he put it up, and she beat me by a lot. But it's still there. It's still in our house, and it's moved homes with us. So yeah.
Oh, that's an incredible way of teaching. My husband asked my son the same question and he picked Nintendo.
Oh, good.
He plays a lot of Mario Kart, so that's what he picked. But that's wonderful. So you've talked about the influence of your father on what you've chosen to do. How has your mother influenced who you are and what you're doing as a career?
So my mom is awesome. I would probably, they both were computer engineers. I would probably argue she was the more talented engineer. And she's run maybe 3 or 4 businesses since I've been born, from inception to managing to selling. And the first one was an e-commerce business called Rainbee. Monsoon means rain, and my sister's name means honeybee. So we were in that warehouse watching her pack boxes, ship things out. The biggest thing I saw both my parents do, but especially my mom then, was incentives. So back then, e-commerce didn't have sales tax. And people would not want to pay for shipping or whatnot. So she'd make the order minimums, but she would also give like a free copy of Harry Potter in an order over like $100 or something. But I think from my mom and my dad, they really pushed entrepreneurship from a pretty young age. I think lemonade stands, picking stocks. They were hot and heavy on Kumon. They were very focused on my math being at as best as it could be. I had the best math tutors all throughout middle school and high school. But they really pushed me trying to find my passion. It didn't matter what it was as long as I loved it. They really liked entrepreneurship, so I think that's what I saw a lot of. And the only other thing they really stressed on was speech and debate. So being able to write and speak and communicate what you believe or thinking is a very important skill.
Right.
And so I'm so grateful that they pushed that. So I think math, speaking,
like most
writing.
Indian parents.
Yeah. And
mathematics is given for sure.
Yes.
So you went to UC Berkeley to study economics, and then you later switched to political science. How was school for you? How and when did you decide to make that switch?
So I went to UC Berkeley. I think a lot of liberal arts colleges, the first 2 years you have no major. So I went with the intention of going with economics, and it's a big computer science school, so I was also trying computer science. When I was taking those classes, I found statistics classes I liked a lot. And then there were so many things that were interesting to me, so it got a little confusing. And then and time was coming up to pick a major, and I just took a political science class, and it was a lot of fun. I got to read and study subjects that I had never studied before, and I got to practice writing like a 40-page paper in 2 or 3 days. So that was a great skill, and it was just the discussions in the classroom were really interesting to me, so that's the major I ended up picking.
As an investor, how did you make your first pitch? I know as an entrepreneur myself, it's very hard to pick up the phone, make that first call or do your first sales pitch. How did you reach out to your first non-family investor?
So technically, hedge funds come under a lot of scrutiny with pitching, and so it gets kind of legal and funky here, but there are certain funds that don't solicit. And so I come under that. So it's actually just if someone's interested in talks to me, that's what comes up. But the first couple people that invested were people that were friends and family who had just kind of asked, hey, I have all my equity in one stock. Do I sell? And then I'll just say, I would not sell this. And then they'll either sell or not. But I think for the most part, in terms of raising capital, I just answer questions that people have. And if they feel inclined to invest, they're welcome to. And if they don't, then that's totally okay too. Yeah, I take a very relaxed approach.
Wonderful.
Yes.
So you've met Warren Buffett at a very young age, and your father and you have shared your admiration for him.
Yes.
And also he's attributed much of his success to learning from him.
Yes.
Now, what would you say? What have you learned from him personally and also from his style of investing?
Yes. So Buffett, we grew up not that religious as a family, but Buffettisms and Mungerisms were at the forefront of everything. So the biggest thing was no self-pity, no envy. That had been, I think, really put into me as a child. And it's something that I think is really important. But in terms of investing, Buffett used to buy things for cheap, wait for them to double, and then just sell them. Thankfully, I got involved in investing when I knew that's probably not the best way to go about it. What he does now is he buys really good businesses. He holds them for a long time. And that's what I try to do. And I think I invest a lot in India. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of fun taking a lot of the principles that he's applied in the US and taking them to India. So, he loves Coca-Cola. That's no secret. And so in India, there's companies like Varun Beverages, which is the PepsiCo bottler. So everything that he's done, you can replicate in any market, even in the US market. And so, yeah, I think just buying really good businesses and holding.
Wow. How do you get the patience to do that? I know it can be really hard, especially, there's so much noise around us. How do you focus on what you need to hold and for how long? How do you get that?
Yeah, so I would say I would look at my stocks quarterly. So depending on what the earnings are, but I really don't touch them for at least a year just because of long-term tax. But I will look at them quarterly to think, is this something that should stay in the portfolio? Is it something that should go? But the best way to not trade frequently is to have lots of hobbies. Oh, so so if you like tennis and golf and things that take a lot of time, that's good.
Yeah, that's wonderful, right?
Yes. It's perfect.
Stocks and then you're having so much fun outside. That's amazing. I was going to ask you, so what else do you enjoy? I know you've been hiking. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I do an annual multi-day hiking trip. I just came back from Nepal. I was hiking in Annapurna. Nice. It was beautiful. I ate dal chawal, so lentils and rice, every single day. Wow. And you're just at the foothills of the Himalayas, and you're drinking chai. I was practicing my Hindi. So that was the most beautiful hike I think I've done. But I've done some hard ones like Kilimanjaro, and some easier ones like Machu Picchu or Patagonia. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I wish I could do that someday.
You totally can.
Hopefully someday.
Yes.
So many of us, like how I'm scared of like hiking and getting on a mountaintop. Many of us are scared to try a new thing out. What would you say to someone who wants to start a new business or, let's say just get into investing? They have some extra time, extra money. They'd like to invest themselves into it. What would you say to them?
Oh, for investing, I would say the S&P 500, just being able to buy that every month or a couple every quarter and then holding it for a long time builds the patience for long-term investing. But in terms of trying new things like businesses or things that are really new to you, I think find a friend and almost like a responsibility or accountability partner. So if you're interested in investing, there's for sure a friend out there who's also interested. And it's something you guys can kind of just discuss. So I used to have a friend where every Monday we would go to BJ's, the pizza shop, and their large pizza is half off. So we'd share a large pizza, and he's a Patel, and so we would just discuss personal finance for like 2 hours. And now we're really good friends, but we weren't good friends before we started. And I think it's like the same thing, like when you go to the gym and I go on a hike or any of these things, I always have a really good friend with me because I think the hard part is just showing up.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So we spoke about Warren Buffett earlier. Do you have any other investors or mentors who you really look up to?
I have a bunch, actually. So there's this website called dataroma.com, DATAROMA, and it has all the value investors. And there's this rule in the U.S. where if you have over 100 million in U.S. securities, you have to disclose what you own 45 days after the quarter ends. So I've been looking at that website since, 17, 18 years old. And I do it every quarter now as part of my work. I go through it. And you can, there's a lot of fund managers that aren't on there, but that's a great place to start, and it's filtered out. But I would basically check out what all the wealthy people who run funds professionally are buying. And the exercise I run is, why did they buy this? And my thesis when I was a teenager was really simple. I think I saw Buffett buy Visa. I didn't understand that then. If you Google what is Visa's business model, Google will tell you. And the thesis is just for every new card holder, it's 100% gross profit. They don't even pay for the card. Mm-hmm. The bank pays for that. So, I looked at that. I thought, that's something new. I didn't know that that's how it worked. And then you look up who are Visa's competitors. I saw MasterCard. I saw Amex. And then you can literally Google everything. How does this one make money and how does that one make money? And kind of just start to build the mental model of what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And there's so many investors who over the last 10 years, they buy new things. I still don't understand why. And there's a bunch of investors who I really get what they're doing. So every quarter when the new thing they buy comes or what they've sold comes out, I feel like I understand their process better and it builds my process.
No, that's wonderful. Yeah. Okay, good to know. So in one of your interviews, you said you're naturally skeptical.
Yes.
How has that influenced the approach to your investing?
Oh, yeah. So I don't trust. It's hard for me to trust certain things. And I think it's really helped me specifically as a woman because my father's an investor. A lot of the men around me are investors. And so I think I'm really thankful I'm skeptical because, if somebody tells me, oh, this stock is great because of X, Y, and Z, I'm really good about doing my own homework before buying it. And I think that's helped me a lot. And I think it's really easy for someone to tell you, oh, this chemical company is going to make a lot of money in the next 2 quarters. How do you know that, right? You have to look that up. So sure. I like doing investigative journalism and figuring out things for myself. So if somebody tells me something, I don't trust it. But if I find it myself, I trust that.
Good.
Yeah.
And talking about, the commotion around you. So there's a lot of commotion around all of us.
Yes.
There's social media, there's news headlines, there's other breathless stories that demand our attention. Not even like they'll capture you.
Yes.
So how do you cancel out that noise? How do you stay focused?
That's a tough one. I think I stay focused by just not being too hard on myself. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really hard to be focused for like 12, 14 hours a day. There's certain times in the day you're low energy. There's certain times of the day you're high energy. And I think like things happening in the world, unless they have something that impact me personally or my stocks, it's just news. And then the same thing goes for, things happening to my friends or the people in my family. Like, I really try to be there for them, but I come first. My business comes first. My personal health and my well-being come first. I think you have to be selfish, and you have to prioritize. Like you have kids, so nothing. Once I become a mother, nothing would come before them.
So, tell me a little bit about Dakshana Foundation. We touched upon it a little bit when I introduced you earlier, but tell me more.
Dakshana is my favorite thing in the whole world. It's a nonprofit that my parents started in, I think, 2005. And it really started taking steam maybe 2007 or 8, if I'm correct. I was a teenager then, so let's hope that's correct. Basically, it's a copy of Super 30, Anand Kumar, and we test students all over India in 10th standard. In the beginning, it was just for engineering. Now it's engineering and medical school. But we take students who are really poor, who are really smart, and we test them. And we take the cream of that, and we move them to 8 centers around India, and we take over their education for 2 years. And so India has an IIT exam. It's the Indian Institute of Technology. The wealthy kids and middle-class kids, it will study for 2 years with like really expensive training to try and get into the school. And the acceptance rate is something less than 2%, maybe 1.4, 1.5%. And our kids, I think we get over 50% in. We've had some years almost 70%. Wow. And some of their parents make $20, $30 a month. And they go through 2 years with us, 4 years of school. And basically by the time they graduate, they can they're earning at an incredible level where they can alleviate their family out of poverty. And we started medical school maybe 5 or so years ago, and that has more women in it, which is awesome. It's my favorite thing. Every time I go to India, I stop by the schools. I speak with the students. There's certain students who have immigrated to the U.S., and I hang out with them here. Wow. And they're a really bright group of kids.
So you grew up in California. You make these frequent trips to India where you're interacting with Dakshana staff and also the kids who go to the school. You're doing these hiking trips. How have these experiences shaped who you are today and how you do things? Do you think it has had an influence on, your style of investing, let's say, or the way you interact with your friends and family?
I think so. The India trip started when I was a teenager. So I think it's had a huge impact on who I am as a person. I'm just grateful to see that other side of India. I've seen so much of rural India. So I guess it's kind of helped with my Indian equities on how rural India works. But with the hiking trips and just going back and forth, I think I just have an adventurous spirit. And I'm also pretty organized on my trip planning and coordinating. Some of these trips have like 20, 25 people on them. So it takes a lot of coordination. And I think I'm operationally talented, especially with running a fund. I have no CFO or administrative or executive assistant or anything. But I love my life. I get to, hike once a year. I get to go to India once or twice a year, and then other times I'm just going to Pilates and reading about stocks. And
that's amazing.
It's really good. Fun. Yeah, it's good.
So do you ever experience FOMO as an investor? No. Okay,
no,
that's good.
No FOMO. I think I'm totally okay with missing out on a good idea because there's only so much research you can do as one person. I think if you have a team and, you're covering the full global investment world, you're gonna feel really bad if you miss something when you're paying someone. But I know what I'm capable of covering, and I'm capable of covering only so much. So if there's a really good idea that came on my desk and I said no, and it goes up 10 times, that's okay. Like, I'll just try and do a better job next time. But
I'll be crying.
Yeah. But if there's something I bought and I was wrong and I lose money, then I'm tough on myself. Yeah. Then I need to do better.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Good to know.
Yes.
So many of us are scared out to try a new thing. Okay. What advice would you share with someone at that stage? And where can he or she start from? You said earlier, meet a friend, start talking about finances. For some of us, that might not be an option.
Yes.
Yes. We're doing our thing, we have our full-time jobs, we have kids, family, so much going on. But there's this one idea, right? What advice would you offer that person?
Start at a small scale. So I think if it's something if you're trying to invest on your own time, then just put like a couple $100 extra into an account every month and try to buy stock. If you don't even have capital to do that, there's so many websites where you can trade for free, where it's like you have a portfolio, but you don't, but it might help you build the confidence before you invest. If it's something like a small business idea or something, my college roommates and I, we have a hair care company. We started that at a small scale before we incorporated. We interviewed friends, created lab samples, tested it on our hair, worked on it for almost a year before we made it an actual company, went through like the patent process. So I think the problem a lot of people have is they start big. And I think the best thing is to start very small. So like Etsy is a great place to sell things if you're trying to build some kind of entrepreneurial spirit. But yeah, I think just start small.
Yeah, tiny steps.
Very tiny.
Tiny steps.
Yes.
That's amazing. I know you love to read.
Yes.
Would you like to share a few books with us?
My favorite recent book so far, I gave you a copy, is The Deals of Warren Buffett, The First 100 Million. And I find it to be a relatively easy to read book. And it just talks about the investments he made in the beginning. I don't think it uses too many complicated financial terms like some other books. So that's a really good first or first 5 books to read on investing.
So tell me a little bit about your sister, though. What does she do?
She's doing her PhD in clinical psychology. She's about to finish. So she's going to be a therapist.
Wow. Very different from you.
Very different. Yeah, it's very different. So, and that was a big thing. It was, we could do anything we wanted. And both would be, whatever we picked would be celebrated. And I really saw that growing up because I think since I was 8 or 9 years old, I wanted to be like a judge. Like go to law school, clerk, and then take a judgeship. And then I realized I'm a little bit too lazy for law school and particular things. And my sister Momachi, she really oscillated chef, teacher, I don't even know what. Like I think even like grocery bagger. And it was always encouraged. And I watched them do that. And I think I want to do the same with my kids. But anything we had our interest in, they would try to find a way to continue to cultivate it. So with me, I loved reading Nancy Drew. I loved mysteries. I loved the law. And so I did a lot of mock trial in high school. I wrote for the newspaper. I did speech and debate. And then they also would give me like John Grisham novels. At some point, they felt I was too old reading Nancy Drew. And I just, and I would see my parents talking to their more legal leaning friends to try and also help and give me advice. And so I think the one thing with immigrant communities, especially Indian communities, is I found that we really help each other. I mean, some of my early internships were nepotistic. They were through people my parents knew who were giving me a chance. So our attorney was my first internship. And I think I think being a parent to a kid with like different passions, like we had completely different passions, but they were really well cultivated, I think.
That's good. And was this path straightforward? We spoke a little bit about you choosing to follow the same path as your father, you know, trying to be an investor.
It was not straightforward.
Yeah. Okay. So what was that like? What was the process like?
So I used to not like what he did. I thought he made wealthy people wealthier. And I thought that was not that cool. Especially being like a teenager at a very liberal college, you know, that doesn't fly well. And but I thought the investing part was kind of cool, and I think I talked to him about that. And so he introduced me to UCLA's endowment when I was a student at UC Berkeley, and I met the chief investment officer. He is Indian, and he was really sweet, and he offered me an internship. That was life-changing because I got to read what all the investors did all over the world that they had invested in. I read their holdings. I read why they bought it. And I also read why they sold it. And I also read in-depth case studies on certain things. And that was the coolest thing. And so I worked for them 2 summers. They sent me to India for a month to work for an Indian hedge fund, which was also awesome. And I was looking at how to invest in an emerging market at 20 years old. And I'm just so grateful I had that experience because none of my peers had that. And it really came from, you know, my dad's connections, but also just these other Indian uncles also giving me a chance. And so I actually, after college, asked them, UCLA Endowment, if I could work for them because I told them I loved your mission. You aren't making someone wealthier. You're making an endowment that's meant to educate people, and you're trying to grow a financial aid office. It has a good a good client. And they told me no, and they told me to go do equity research. I said, okay, fine.
Was that hard for you?
No, I'm fine with taking rejection.
Okay, that's good.
It happens a lot.
Yeah, I would have been like, hey, I'm sipping on my coffee.
It's good.
Like I'm sitting in my sofa.
Yes. No, I think it makes us a lot stronger. Rejection. So I actually mailed my resume to 750 hedge funds.
Wow.
In the U.S.
750?
Oh, yes.
Did I hear that?
Yes,
correctly?
yes.
750 hedge funds.
Yes.
So how many people replied back to you?
About 80.
Okay.
But most of them said thanks, but no thanks. So then rejection gets easier, one after the other, it gets a little bit easier.
But don't you experience self-doubt then?
No, because 8 emailed saying yes.
8. Okay.
8. And so I had an interview with 7 or 8 hedge funds. and 2 gave me offers. So, you know, like, 650 something, 600, like a lot of funds never responded. But
that's a lot of applications, to be honest. You know,
Oh, yes.
I'd like, once I'd reached 100, I'd be like, okay, you know,
So they weren't
I'm
applications.
not good enough. I'm not gonna get anywhere. So how did you keep going, honestly?
So yeah, it wasn't like one after the other. I sent them all at the same time.
Okay.
So it was just like a mail merge. So I actually sent 400, had 4 interviews, no offers. So then I resent that 400 plus another 350 during my like senior year of college winter break. And, you know, I just, you know, I had encouragement from my parents, really. And I think, I don't remember getting bogged down because when people replied saying thanks but no thanks, they wrote responses to my stock pitch, or they gave advice, or some of them agreed to do a coffee chat, or they forwarded it to something. So it never felt like 100 rejections. It felt like, wow, these people took the time to respond to my random letter. That's cool.
So thank you so much, Monsoon, for coming and talking to us today. This was wonderful. I loved knowing you better, loved knowing what inspires you, motivates you, and keeps you going. And I hope that we can sit down together. That's my honest hope, that we can sit down together and talk more about finance and budgeting and investing.
Yes.
So thank you so much for coming and sharing with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Jasmine. It's so nice to be here.